Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to another episode of the Weekend Crusaders. My name's Sean Waskrug. With me, as always, is Mr. Piv, aka Brian Michaels. And we are here to talk about 5 movies that came out during the week of October 8th through the 10th. Obviously, like I said, on my No Time to Die review, we are running a little late this week, or the last 3 weeks in a row, because life finds a way.
Sean had to go and get a job.
You have a job too now.
Mine doesn't interfere.
Now. Brian's been basically a hobo on the street. Now he's got a job. So, yeah, we're entering holiday season, clearly, with the movies we're picking, and hours are a lot worse. So it makes it harder to get these out on time. So bear with us. We'll get them out, due the weekend, but we aren't going to be releasing them on probably Friday right at midnight like we normally been doing. But nonetheless, we got 5 movies that we're talking about today. 3 of these movies are favorites of mine, and one of them is hands down probably one of my worst films I've ever seen in my entire life, especially in a theater. And then another one is one I haven't seen before until just recently. What are your thoughts on these 5 movies, Brian?
3 of these films I really like. One of them's really bad, and then the other one's even worse.
I already know what you're talking about. We're gonna wait to get to that one, but we are gonna start with one that is really, really bad. We're going to be starting with our sneaker pick. This movie, and I said this last week, this is probably, now granted, prior to our show, this was top 3 one of the worst films I've ever seen in my life. This is definitely, to this day, the worst movie theater experience. If not in the top 3, that probably goes up with It Follows and Cold Pursuit. That's probably like top 3 worst movie theater experiences ever, of having to watch a shitty film. Hereditary ranks up there just because the crowd sucked. But I hate this movie so much that when I was sitting in the theater, I was still working for the movie theater at the time when this came out. I was literally screaming at the screen about how shitty this film was. Now, granted, I was screening it, so it wasn't like a theater full of customers. It was a theater full of other theater workers, so I wasn't a complete jackass and stuff like that. But this film, oh my god, I hate this movie so damn much. We are talking about, say his name because I don't say it wrong.
Uwe Boll.
Uwe Boll. I always say Uwe. Boll's House of the Dead. House of the Dead came out October 10th, 2003, had a budget of $12 million, had a weekend opening of $5.5 million, was number 6 its opening weekend, had a finished box office of $13.81 million, $10.24 million domestic, and $3.56 million international. This movie is based off of the arcade game House of the Dead. For anyone who's gone to a bowling alley or a movie theater in the last 20 years, you guys have probably seen the House of the Dead arcade game. It's a very, very fun game. I've put lots of quarters into this arcade playing this game. I'm sure, and Brian, I think you have too. You said you've played this arcade game.
Well, I played a ton of this, and there's still a place around here called Nickel World where they have a bunch of old arcade games. You just go and just play it with nickels and shit. And this is one of the ones I still play every time I'm in there.
This and Time Crisis was probably my, because the recoil on the gun for Time Crisis. I love that. I love this game. So when I heard they were making a movie of this, I was genuinely like, okay, cool, because it was 2003. Zombie wasn't overly done at that point, so I was like, all right, sweet. Then we see the movie. I said this to you off screen, not counting all the movies we watched this year, because we have watched some bad films. My top 3 worst films of all time, and no, it's not The Room, because I refuse to watch that thing from beginning to end, was House of the Dead, Drop Dead Gorgeous, and Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. I despise this movie to the umpteenth degree. I hate this film. But this was Brian's first time watching this film. So, Brian, what were your thoughts of House of the Dead?
I this is one of those, I actually thought I had seen it before, and I realized I hadn't, because there's House of the Dead and Alone in the Dark and a bunch of these horror, cheap movies, especially ones made by Uwe Boll. It kind of all came out within a few years span, so they all mixed together in my brain. This is actually, I think we decided this was Uwe's first Hollywood movie.
I think we looked it up, and it was his first.
Before he was known as Uwe Boll, the really shitty filmmaker. This is the beginning of it.
Yeah.
So people went into this not knowing what it was, except for, hey, it's based on the video game. You know, because even horror movies have a really low bar to entertain people. I mean, people will go see almost anything, and they're like, "Oh, jump scares, yay!" or "Blood, great, yay, we had a good time." Which, fine, there's a place for that. Just dumb fun.
That's why I review horror movies much more harshly than other films, because I expect better from them.
Yeah,
But yeah,
but this one is just, it makes sci-fi original movies look like really well-made epics. I
oh yeah,
mean,
this was before all the shitty sci-fi films.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then watching it now, you're like, wow, this is as low as a bar as those are. This is like even worse than those. Because I mean, the acting is to be expected. Although you got like Jurgen Prochnow. He's a guy who's been in Das Boot. He's been in Da Vinci Code. He's been in The English Patient. He's been in Air Force One. He's like a real actor. I don't know if he just needed to pay off a debt or what, but I don't know why he's in this movie. Beyond that, there's really nobody recognizable except Clint Howard, who's basically made a career beating these kind of movies. So I mean, the acting is what it is. The special effects are, I mean, just like the makeup effects. Sean was pointing out to me how, like, you know, they'd only like do like the 5 people in the front and the monsters in the back like barely get makeup.
Yeah, like there's literally scenes
Like rub some
where
dirt on your faces.
if you look past the first row, it's just cast and crew like just standing there, not in zombie makeup. It's horrendous.
Yeah, but the whole, I mean, but even from a story standpoint, okay, first of all, the thing takes place in this island where these kids are going for how they describe it, the ultimate rave?
The
biggest rave of all time or something?
Year, or biggest rave of all time, something. Basically, it's Club Dread without the, you know, Pina Coladaville crap. It's just
Club Dread had more people on the island.
They do a huge rave.
This is like 30 people
Sponsored by
standing around
Sega.
one little miniature stage.
Sponsored by Sega.
And it was sponsored by, there's a rave apparently sponsored by Sega.
Sega.
So it's just like, oh, I couldn't get over that. And they have like, I don't even know. But anyway,
well,
so
first, they start off the movie because you're like, what the hell is going on? Like a PI, like in all the places and all the, like this weird like over narration,
totally.
And it's like, this is where the darkness falls and all the and I survived and I don't know. And then like you meet like these 5 other characters, and then there's like, it's a shame that they all had to die. And it's like, these are our main characters.
So we know that these are all going to die except for this one. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, okay. So that's how the movie starts, and then you get the horrific boat scene with Clint Howard, and the dialogue is so cringy. It's so cringy. But continue. I cut you off.
Oh no, I wasn't going to go through the whole movie scene by scene. Although
no, we're not.
Lead us up to the scene that you could not get over involving the boat. Go ahead.
Okay. There's like 4 things that I have huge problems with. 1 was the makeup thing that I explained. 2 is apparently this is an island with a gigantic tarp over it, because the boat is like, I think we looked at it, like maybe 50 yards away from the island, if that. You can swim to this boat. It is not far away. But you hear storms, and you're like, okay. And you go to the boat, and it's pouring. Like, it is pouring rain.
It's like in the middle of monsoon.
Exactly. Yet
on the island, they're like, oh, I think there's a storm coming. And it's like,
yeah,
this island ain't that big.
Yeah, every time you see the boat, it's pouring like a monsoon. Then you go to the island, dry as a bone. Not a single fucking raindrop. You hear the storm, and before you go, well, maybe the storm's right there. No, the entire time, this boat is raining. Unless the stars are there, and then it stops raining. What's his name? Is it Proctor?
Jurgen Prochnow?
Prochnow, who plays Kirk.
Yeah,
even when he's on said boat, he's not wet. Which means that it's raining all around him except right where he's standing, because he's wearing like a leather jacket and everything. He's bone dry.
You can tell like they had something, or they probably just had rain in the background and they had like a layer of water in front of it falling. Yeah. But then where he was, there's no rain falling.
So apparently this island is magical to the point where no rain must fall on this island. But if you go 50 feet off the island into the water, monsoon season, drives me insane. Going to the zombies in the film, like I said, makeup aside, there were so many that you could tell had never done any acting before. Because first off, zombies have weapons in this, like they have axes and all this stuff. How many times, and you pointed this out, Brian, how many times, especially during the big like cemetery fight, did you see a zombie just like just waiting, like behind the villain, like they're like right behind the main character. They could just attack, and they're just like,
yeah, like the heroes are all like walking in a row, shooting at all the zombies, and you see like zombies gathering behind them, and they like you could have just killed them. Nobody turned around. You could
it's the equivalent of like a martial arts film when all the bad guys circle the hero, and they all just like, okay, you go. And
one at a time, while the rest of them like doing this the whole time, just looking like they're busy.
Exactly, but this like they're just standing there like, I don't know what to do. Like Ricky Bobby, like I don't know what to do with my hands, so I'm just gonna stand here. And then even the cemetery scene, which is the biggest scene of the film. First off, unlimited ammo from everyone. Like I'm sorry, this fight would have lasted 2 minutes tops. It's a 10+ minute long, just over the top music and just shoot them up and all that stuff. And this is the part that bugs me. And this and you explain, these are college kids, I'm assuming. No, nothing special about them. You've got woman who looked like she got hit in the face with a shovel, who's supposed to be the pretty blonde, who she doesn't last long, but my God, she's fugly. You've got dude with eyes that are like super, super close. I know we're attacking their physical characteristics. I know it's a douchey thing to do, but we really don't know their names. You got final girl redhead.
Well, when you cast it was like that, the hot college kids on the island. Then
yeah, you got final girl redhead. You've got the stereotypical Asian who knows martial arts but is wearing a big red, white, and blue jumpsuit. You've got the narrator dude who really has no character whatsoever except that he's the narrator. And then you got this cop that shows up like fucking Rambo with grenades and all this crap. Why? We don't know.
She thought she was going to follow some kids at a rave, and she's bringing boxes of grenades. She
was following the captain. Like she was going after him. Like he's not a like. Granted, they're smuggling shit, but you don't need an arsenal of an army to go through that stuff.
You forgot that the bland dude is also the world's greatest underwear model or something like that?
Oh, yes. He was apparently the world's greatest underwear model.
And this guy is not.
No, not at all. Then you have the final girl redhead who I guess was dating the narrator guy who broke up with him so she could focus on her fencing. Like, that wasn't going to come back around.
First of all, this is the very beginning of the movie. The very beginning of the movie, he talks about how we broke up so that I could, focus on my studies and she could work on her fencing. I'm like, A, why do you need to break up to work on your fencing? You can still date. And 2, that is so completely random. That's like, there's no way that's not coming back up.
It was great because Brian's brain broke at that moment because he goes, wait, did he say fencing? I was like, yep. I go, welcome to this movie.
So we waited, and Sheriff's like, a sword.
Like, we're gonna get it. It's like, it's not gonna be anything special, Brian. But here's the thing that also is another big problem for me. Once again, these are regular college kids. There's nothing special about these kids. And then all of a sudden, they start pulling out some Matrix shit. Stereotypical Asian girl in a U.S. jumpsuit does the Matrix Neo back thing. The final girl redhead chick jumps 10 feet in the air to shoot a shotgun at a zombie. And just this ridiculous stuff. And then they start to try to integrate the video game into the movie by doing cutscenes of the video game, which is just jarring because he's like, what?
It did it. I think we got up to like 9 times.
Oh, no, we were
just like
20.
Random, like scene transitions. It played like a brief flash of it. No. It got up to like 9 times in like the first half of the movie. Like just brief, like random scene transition. Like, why did they throw that in there? But then once they hit that cemetery scene, it was like 30 and beyond.
Oh yeah, it was like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
But then they started to treat the live action like a video game as well, where like they would do this weird 360 camera pan, but then when one of the characters would die, it would like just be the character by themselves, 360 pan with blood coming down the screen, like game over kind of thing. It's like, what the
I'm sure they thought they were doing clever nod to the game, but it's like, Yeah, no.
No, not if you haven't established this. Like
But
Scott
that Matrix
Pilgrim.
thing, this came out in 2003.
Yeah.
So I mean, that whole like 2000 to 2005 area, there was a ton of people trying to like, copy the Matrix, things like that. But this was so overboard. I mean, literally like in a 2-minute period, they did like a 360 shot of every single character, and there was still like 8 of them alive at this point.
And all of
And
them
it was
were
just
like they had different weapons than what they were using at the time of the scene.
Yeah, it
Like
was
I was like they
ridiculous.
showed the one girl, and I was like, that's not the gun she was using. And then they just showed the girl, and she's back to using the other gun. And it's also supposed to be like badass scene shots.
Also, by the way, if you jump up in the air and shoot a shotgun, you're gonna fly backwards. Just saying.
Yeah, and I mean a lot of them are using the guns incredibly the wrong way. Like clearly don't know how to use weapons. But they added this weird video game element, which just doesn't work. Scott Pilgrim is a movie that uses video game elements, but it is established scene 1. So you know the world you're in. This has not established any of that throughout the film. And so all of a sudden you're an hour into this movie and they just start randomly doing this. You're like, what the fuck is happening right now? Then they get stuck in, I guess, presumably what's the house of the dead. But the whole time during this, and Brian was getting really bugged by this, there's this one character who's just stalking and just kind of creepily looking at them, and he's got like a messed up face. And Brian's like, who the hell is this guy? Because he's done nothing except just watch from afar. And I go, that's the main bad guy. And he was like, is he gonna ever pop up? I go, yeah, like in the last 10 minutes of the movie. Which, yes, we go all the way, and we're like, I think like within like 7 to 10 minutes left in the film, he finally comes out and it's like, I'm the bad guy, and blah, blah, blah.
And that was sword.
And has the sword, which Brian goes, sword! And I'm like, yeah.
Here comes our fencing scene.
Yeah, here comes the fencing scene.
I'm sorry, but I don't care how much fencing skills you have. This is like a big 2-handed battle sword.
It's a bronze sword. I'm just like, and I tell him, I go, even with all her fencing, this sword is way too heavy for her. It's way too heavy for anyone to fence with. You're not going to be able to do what you can do with this kind of sword. I don't care if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger being Conan. You can't fence like this with that kind of a sword. But here she is. Blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, this movie breaks my brain. It's so effing bad. And it's just, by the end of it, it's basically a supernatural episode. I've seen an actual character. It's like a Necronomicon character in Supernatural. They've done it multiple times, and they've done more in 40 minutes of television to sell that than this film had in an hour and like 29 minutes or whatever. Because at the end of the film, spoilers, guys, because don't watch this damn film. The redhead, the final girl, dies. She gets stabbed. Because clearly they told us at the beginning of the film she isn't going to live. But then the dude at the end, I guess, apparently figures out how to turn her into a zombie and keeps her alive. And we only find that out in narration at the end credits. Like, we don't ever see it. Like, he's literally carrying her dead body to the helicopter and shit. And Brian's like, is she dead? I was like, she got stabbed with a
straight
bronze sword right through here. She's dead. Like, there's no way she's alive. But she managed to get stabbed, stand back up, and basically do a Japanese karate leg drop to kill the final zombie. Which they're not really zombies because you got bit. You get bit in these and you don't turn into a zombie. There was at least 3 characters that got bit and didn't get sick or died. They became a zombie when they died, but they didn't die via the bite. So this movie is horrendously bad.
Yeah.
It is,
honestly, it's exactly what I expected, which was awful, and whatever, it's over with.
Yeah, it's like I said, one of the worst films I've ever seen. Now, granted, we've seen some really, really bad films this year. This is one I actually saw in a theater, and this is and they made a sequel.
Well, I was gonna say you paid to see it, but you were still at the theater.
No, I was screening it for the theater, so no, I did not pay. But they made sequels to this.
Did they?
There's at least a sequel. There's at least House of the Dead 2. Because when I was trying to find photos for this, there was House of the Dead 2, and I think there might have been a third one. This is not on anything. I would be surprised if it didn't pop up sometime here in the next month because of it being Halloween. Do not watch this. I would say watch Sharknado marathons or Sharkconda or whatever octopus monster thing. before wasting time watching this crap fest of House of the Dead. There are at least 50 zombie films that I would say watch on repeat before watching this one time. So no, don't look for this. If you ever seen both films, you know that they're shit films anyway. So don't go looking for this film, because this film is hot garbage to the max degree. It's so hot garbage that Garbage Pail Kids won't even get in that trash can. That is how bad this film is. Moving on. No, it's totally that far. Because they got squished. Anyway, moving on to our revisited film. Anyone who hasn't been watching our shows don't understand that. But for you loyal watchers, you guys know that joke, and we welcome it. We're moving on to our revisited film. This is probably up there in my top 5 favorite action films of the 90s. I love this film. I've watched this film way too many times that I can count. And I was afraid, because like you remember Cliffhanger from a few months back. I remember really, really loving that movie. And then I went back and rewatched it for the show, and I was like, oh my God, this is not good. Like, this is not good at all. This did not happen this time. I watched this and still loved it so damn much. We are talking about the 1993 action film Demolition Man. Demolition Man came out October 8th, 1993, had a budget of $57 million, had a weekend opening of $14.26 million. It was number 1 its opening weekend and spent 2 weeks at the number 1 spot, and had a finished box office of $58.05 million. I've talked a lot. So, Brian, Demolition Man.
Yeah, I mean, Demolition Man came out during this period. I mean, this is actually came out the same year as Cliffhanger. Yeah.
I thought, was Cliffhanger 92?
No, I think they're both 93.
Okay.
But it was a period in Sylvester Stallone's career where he was kind of like, post his kind of first real successful area of the Rockies and the Rambos and that kind of thing. But it wasn't kind of into that, renaissance he had in the later years. It's kind of that middle area where, like, you weren't sure if he was going to, like, stick around, if his career was going to fade away. Came with Cliffhanger, which was solid, and then he made this one, which I think took a lot of people by surprise, because this one turned out to be a lot of fun. And it's kind of fun because it's like at a kind of certain point in everybody's career that was in this, because Sylvester Stallone was kind of changing what he was doing to kind of stick around longer. Wesley Snipes was just becoming kind of a big action star. The year before this was Passenger 57. Sandra Bullock, this is basically her first big movie. This is a year before Speed. But she actually was in this because Lori Petty dropped out. So they put her in this movie.
I don't know if I can picture Lori Petty in that role.
So they put her in this movie, and now she is a little goofy in this, but I mean the character's supposed to be that way. But I guess she caught people's attention enough that they let her go on to make Speed, and then from there it went on to be a great career for her, obviously.
Benjamin
Dennis Leary, who I loved at the time for his like stand-up comedy and stuff, he's basically being himself. I mean, he goes off on a full like MTV style rant like he used to do on there all the time. They basically put a camera on him and said, just say what you want to say.
I want to rub myself in green jello, run down the streets reading Playboy, and
so he just did his thing. So I mean, this has this cast of a lot of people who, like, just the right time in their careers came together. It's a fun movie. It definitely, and it knows it's fun. It doesn't try to take anything too seriously, because I mean, there's a lot of silly concepts in this movie. I do think that if I have any complaints about the movie, they get a little too silly at times. I mean, there's like weird, like cartoony sound effects a lot of times in the movie. We're kind of like, okay, it's kind of taking the silliness a little too far. But beyond things like that, I mean, it's a well-made movie. It's fun. I mean, as silly as some of the concepts are, it still works. There's tons of classic quotable lines that come out of this movie.
Oh, stuff that are still relevant today. Still being talked about this film today.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, this is a movie that when it came out, and I didn't have expectations for it, and I really enjoyed it, and I've seen it a ton of times since then, just like Sean. A little bit of trivia: the Taco Bell being the only restaurant left that survived the restaurant wars. If you see this in like Europe, they use Pizza Hut instead because they don't have Taco Bell. Just so you know.
I wish I would have loved to have lived in Europe then. At that case, because I hate Taco Bell, so I would have much preferred Pizza Hut. But yeah, it's first things first. If I was in this world, I'd be living in the sewer, because no chance in hell I'd be able to survive up top. Because First off, don't like Taco Bell. Second off, the commercial show tune radio station. Oh my God. First off, not being able to cuss. I would be fined 1 credit for everything. And then not to mention, I said the part that probably stays relevant is definitely the 3 seashells. Hell, during the pandemic, they were making that joke. Like, I guess we better start learning how to use the 3 seashells because how everyone was going nuts with toilet paper. I unabashedly love this film. I know it's over the top. I know there's some cringy dialogue, mainly coming from Bob Gunton, who plays the chief, who every 5 seconds has to call Stallone a Neanderthal, caveman, savage, whatever, blah, 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 which his character was like, just shut up. But this is, we've talked about this a lot. I love, more than anything in action films, when the villain is having so much fun being the villain.
Oh, and Wesley Snipes is having a blast.
I've never seen Wesley Snipes have as much fun as he's had in this film. Because if you have a fun villain, that makes the movie enjoyable on top of everything else. If you have great action, you have a great hero, you got great humor, that's great. But if you've got a villain that you could just tell is unabashedly loving his screen time, that makes the movie that much stronger. And Wesley Snipes, like you said, is having the most fun.
Basically, take like the super, the super quippy, happy, bonkers, guy he was playing the first half, like What Man Can't Jump, and turn that guy into a villain and crank it up to 11, and you got him here. He's just having a blast.
He's just going off. Like I feel like 90% of his dialogue is improv.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, hey, Wesley, here's the scene. You're wanting to do this. Here's the world you're in. Go. And just shoot it and edit it the way you want. Wesley Snipes is fantastic in this film. If there's one character, because like I said, this film is almost 30 years old now. Yeah, I know obviously Sandra Bullock and Stallone's in this film. Could I tell you what their names were right now? Well, now I can't because I just saw the movie. But if you had asked me last week, what's trivia wise, what is Sandra Bullock's name? What is Stallone's name in Demolition Man? You would probably know. I probably would get him a multiple choice. If you ask me who Wesley Snipes played, Simon Phoenix, you remember Simon Phoenix. He is hands down one of the best 90s villains ever. I love his character so damn much. And then they do a great job establishing him in the first 10 minutes of the film in 1996. That you don't need to waste all this time trying to explain his character because Stallone and Snipes do a fantastic job of doing that in that first 10 minutes. So that when we jump into the world, it's a fish out of water for both of them. One obviously has more skill sets because of certain story elements in the movie, but it works and the humor is there. Like you still have Stallone poking a jab at Schwarzenegger, which I didn't realize was so much of a 90s trope between these two where each one of the films they got to poke at the other. Watching our show, I've actually started to spot that stuff now. I love that banter between those two. I love that they each one has like, we got to get a Stallone joke. We got to get a Schwarzenegger joke and throw it in here. But I enjoy this movie so damn much. The action is fun. It's solid. Even the final sequence when they're in like the cryogenic chamber building or whatever. And he's got the big like blaster thing. Even the museum scene as well. This is a very, very fun movie. Sandra Bullock, like you said, she's relatively brand new. She's bubbly, kind of adorkable in a way, kind of like an Anna Kendrick type back then. Which if they ever did it for today, that would be who I would cast for Sandra Bullock. Would be Anna Kendrick. I can totally see that. Yeah. That would be 100. Her or Zoe Deutsch. Those would be the only two that I would cast for this performance. Maybe Haley Steinfeld, but not really. But those two definitely. But it's
I can see Haley Steinfeld actually.
I guess like all three of them totally play the Sandra Bullock character. But I love this film, and there's so many just like you said, great quotes. I mean, you got just even the cast that has like Rob Schneider. He's great in his small scene. You've got what's his name? You got Glenn Shaddix as Associate Bob. Benjamin Bratt as Alfredo Garcia. You got what's his name? I'm blanking on him. He was one of the other cops. Troy Evans. Troy Evans.
Oh.
And Billy Cobbs. All of them. They have small parts in the film, but they all just round out a very solid cast with decent dialogue, fun action. Like I said, then you have Dennis Leary there as well. You got a decent plot, but literally this film strives and works because of Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone. More so Wesley Snipes, because he has to do so much more. Where Stallone's being Stallone, but that's the fun thing too. Is like Stallone, as we've seen on our show, he was going through this comedy action trope, like kind of mixing them both. This one is the perfect film where he meshes the comedy and the action to perfection. And then you have Snipes there as the perfect combination with it as well. And that's why Demolition, almost 30 years now, is still relevant today. It is still enjoyed by so many people today because it's just so much fun. So like Lethal Weapon, it's so much fun, or Die Hard. It's going to keep 30 years from now. I think Demolition Man will still be relevant because it is a fun film to watch.
And given enough time, and Sylvester Stallone will do a sequel to this because he's going back to the well in all his movies these days. So.
I don't think this one will have one. I really don't think they'll do this one. I hope they don't. Don't touch Demolition Man. Leave Demolition in its perfect little bubble. Don't ruin it. Don't touch it. Anything else you want to talk about with Demolition Man? Nope. All right. On anything?
It is not currently. I mean, it's on like Showtime right now, which I think is why it's not. But if nothing else, it will show up on HBO Max. It's a Warner Brothers movie. But I think because of a Showtime contract, it's not. It's the only reason it's not there right now.
It used to always be like that Saturday
it's on cable every day somewhere.
Exactly, and it'd be like dubbed over because obviously it's cussing to the max because you get fined in the movie. But anyway, we're moving on to Brian's pick. This is the one movie that I hadn't seen prior to the show, which is weird because this is totally a movie I would have seen. It really is. According to Brian, I think according to a lot of people, this was supposed to be the start of the Dark Universe. But we are talking about I don't want to necessarily call it a horror film. We're going to call it an action film. Dracula Untold. Dracula Untold came out October 10th, 2014, had a budget of $70 million, had a weekend opening of $23.51 million. It was number 2 its opening weekend, and a finished box office of $217.12 million, $56.28 million domestic, and $160.84 million international. Yeah, like I said, this was the first time I had seen it. So, Brian, go ahead with your film, Dracula Untold.
Yeah, no, this is just a movie that I actually really very much enjoy because, we've seen, I think Dracula's second only to Sherlock Holmes, if I remember correctly, as far as the number of times he's been portrayed on screen, because so many different movies have been made about both these people. I'm
assuming Spider-Man's catching up, but yeah.
Probably. But Dracula's been done so many times, and it's almost always essentially the same story. And this is one that I thought took like a completely different take on the story. I mean, yes, he's a vampire. Yes, he has this urge for blood. Yes, he can't stand the sunlight. All the main points are there, but it's a whole different take on the character. It's like the origin of the character, which you see like in Bram Stoker's Dracula. You see a little bit of this Vlad the Impaler stuff in like basically a flashback or a prologue scene to it. But this basically the entire movie is like about this guy and how he became, Dracula. But it's not like the story you've heard before at all. It's something that basically it doesn't ever get into the typical, Transylvania living in a castle kind of Dracula. This is strictly takes place in, I don't even remember what country
it is. Transylvania.
Is it Transylvania? Well, it's Transylvania.
Yeah, it's Transylvania, and it's Castle Dracula.
you know what I mean. The typical.
It's more, I would say it's a lot more like King Leonidas in the 300.
It really has a lot of like 300 kind of influence to it. But that's one thing is I really like the way the film looks. I thought it was very well directed. I think the effects are very well done. Luke Evans, I think, is a really underrated actor. I mean, I've liked him in almost everything I've seen him in. There's a low budget movie called No One Lives, which kind of like him on like this basically vengeful killing spree. I would recommend that movie. But he's obviously done Fast and the Furious. He's done a bunch of other things, and so I really like him. And I thought he kind of did a great job of portraying the character here, who's like this father and this husband and this is a king, I guess. I don't know what he is.
He's a king of like his small
leader of his people.
Yeah.
and he cares for them. He's taking care of them. He's trying to protect them, all these kind of things. And basically, he's very reluctant. He doesn't want to become Dracula. He does this basically out of necessity to save his people and his family. And I really like the way they did that story. I liked especially towards the end of the story where the very people he's trying to save are turning on him, and there's a whole, that whole thing flips. But mostly, I just really like the uniqueness of it. It's from the battle scenes to kind of the powers Dracula had were a little bit different than we've seen before, and it was just something that came out of nowhere and surprised me. I think technically it wasn't the first Dark Universe title because that wasn't decided until after this. But I think this one, when they said, "Hey, let's take a new take on this character," and it made, what you said, like $200 million worldwide, something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's what made Universal say, "Hey, maybe we should reboot all our characters." And so they were going to start with Mummy, obviously, and reboot and make this dark interconnected universe, which I think at the time there was, even within Universal, there was some debate whether or not they were going to incorporate this Dracula, but I don't know if the decision was ever made on that. But this is a movie that I think a lot of people haven't seen. A lot of people that have seen it, I think, went into it expecting your typical Dracula story, and I think that affected their opinion of it. But I mean, go in just expecting a cool new take on it, and you'll enjoy it a lot.
I think what kind of made me hesitant to check it out is, as with the trailers, I got a very big kind of Van Helsing vibe. Like, oh, this just feels like Van Helsing, but it's like the true story of Dracula and all this kind of stuff. So
except without all the cheese of Van Helsing.
Well, yes, but what I'm saying is, like, you go back and watch the trailers, like, it's very Van Helsing-esque to it. So I never really went, and I heard, kind of mixed things about it. But yeah, watching this for the first time, I mean, you're right. I mean, Vlad the Impaler, yes, he's this horrible guy who did a lot of bad things, but now he's trying to atone and live a peaceful life with his wife and his kid, which anyone who knows his son, it's Rickard Stark, the kid who can't run zigzags to save his life. But yeah, it's, and basically, like I say, in a King Leonidas kind of role, the main, like, emperor or king, played by Dominic Cooper, basically wants all the children from his kingdom to basically come be his army. So that's what, leads Vlad to basically have to, like, he fights them off, which starts a war, which they're going to lose. And that's what leads him to find or not, I don't think they call him Dracula. I think he's just, Master Vampire, played by Charles Dance, of all people.
Mm-hmm. Another Game of Thrones alumnus.
Another Game of Thrones guy. And you have this great scene in the cave where they're having this discussion and stuff like that. I loved that scene. And basically, once again, finding kind of a new kind of twist with the Dracula thing is like, I'm gonna kill you and give you my powers if you can withhold biting anyone or feasting for 3 days. You will go back to being human. So basically, have my powers for 3 days. If you don't bite anyone or drink anyone's blood, you'll be fine. And then if not, then I'm free. So you have that dilemma there, as you're really kind of seeing the character of Vlad as, like, what kind of man he is. Because for the most part, he's going through this torture of trying to save his kingdom, trying to save everyone, but basically kind of being like an addict where he's in immense pain, not trying to feed or anything like that. And Luke Evans, and I agree, I love Luke Evans. I think he's a fantastic actor. I've loved him in everything he's in. He's a fantastic Gaston in the Beauty and the Beast film.
He's one of the only things I like in the Hobbit trilogy.
Yeah, as Bard, he was great in the Hobbit. And I liked him in the Fast and Furious films. I love Luke Evans. I think he's a fantastic actor, and I think he does a great job as kind of being like, you see Dracula, you immediately think of one thing, but he's kind of more like I said, King Leonidas, Aragorn from Lord of the Rings-esque type of character, where he's literally doing this to save his child, but effectively he's saving the entire kingdom. And I agree with you, the effects, the way they use his powers, where they don't necessarily, I mean, yes, he's, powerful and stuff like that, but they really utilize the bats in this by making the bats like an extension of his body. And it looks great. It definitely wasn't something I ever thought about using or thinking of using in terms of like a Dracula film. And that, like, turning them into like a big fist and just slamming down on people and having all the bats attack people, I thought looked visually great. There's one aspect of the film that I had a kind of a roll my eyes problem with, which I already explained to you, which for people, this is still relatively not old, so I don't want to spoil it. But there's one part where I'm like, really? Kind of thing. And that part kind of made me go, ugh. But I get where they were going with it, but it also was kind of one of those things where it's like, you could have just done this and it would have been fine, you know. But the film itself, even Dominic Cooper, I like Dominic Cooper as Mehmed, the Emperor. Even Sarah Gadon as is it Marina? Marina? I don't know.
Well, Marina, who in the epilogue, this doesn't spoil anything. She introduced herself as Mina, who is the character we all know from the traditional Dracula story.
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's I think they all do solid jobs in the film. I think even the final fight scene, the uniqueness of what they were doing with like the silver and all that kind of stuff, it shows that Mehmed was a tactical king. Like he wasn't just like this emperor guy like King Xerxes or Emperor Xerxes, or when you call him in 300, where he just stands around and doesn't do anything. This guy's a fighter too, and he's a smart, clever fighter. Like he figured out what Vlad's powers were and what his weaknesses are, and uses them to his advantage into the final fight scene, which I think was a very decent fight scene. But yeah, overall, I think Dracula Untold is a very solid film. I think for what it was and the story that they are trying to tell, I think they did a great job doing it. Yeah, I was a little confused by the end. But I think that, once again, I think that's one of those things where I think if they had gone Dark Universe with it, that probably would have connected it to, because I think that would have.
And even without the Dark Universe, I think they were looking to continue the series. And I don't know why they didn't, because it
made a lot of money.
It made a ton of money. So I think it's because they decided to do the Dark Universe, because, on the heels of Marvel, like, well, wait, we got to have an interconnected universe. We got to do this thing. And I think that kind of made them think, oh, well, we better start over.
Hold off kind of thing. Yeah, because Mummy was like 2 years later?
3.
Was it 2017?
2017, I think, wasn't it?
Okay, so 3 years. Yeah. So yeah, it could have just been that they were like, let's hold off and see the lay of the land with the Dark Universe, and then that fell apart, and I think that's just how Dracula Untold fell apart. But no, if you guys want to see a different, unique tale of the Dracula storyline, and not just the same guy in a cloak going blah, then Dracula Untold definitely is worth checking out, especially if you're a fan of Luke Evans. I think it's a very, very solid film and worth checking out. It's definitely not a horror film by any means, even though the name's got Dracula in it. It's more, like I said, like a action epic war kind of thing. But I think it's a very, very solid film.
It really, I think it's not quite as stylistic with all the slow-mo and stuff, but the closest comparison actually is probably 300, yeah, as far as the tone of the film.
Well, yeah, because I mean, literally, it's one small kingdom taking on a big bad, and yeah, he has to do what he has to do to try to save the kingdom. It's totally 300, just not over stylized with like the comic book aspects. So if you guys like that story, you guys want to see it in a different format, especially the Dracula format, definitely Dracula Untold is worth checking out. On anything?
Not really. Supposedly Sci-Fi Channel is running right now, so you might be able to watch it like on demand on their site.
Yeah, probably.
Otherwise, rent it.
All right, going on to our next pick. It is my pick. And this one's probably going to be a really strange conversation to have. I'm already banking on this being a weird conversation, but we are talking about one of my favorite Quentin Tarantino films, and we are talking about Kill Bill Volume 1. Kill Bill Volume 1 came out October 10th, 2003, had a budget of $30 million, had a weekend opening of $22.2 million. It was first its opening weekend, its only weekend at number 1, and had a finished box office of $180.9 million, $70.09 million domestic, and $110.80 million international. I'll hold off on Brian real quick because I know Brian's going to have the hot takes. So let me get my stuff out first. I love Kill Bill. I do think that this would have been better if it would just been one whole film. I know that they have Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair. They haven't released it yet or anything like that. I think Quentin Tarantino has shown it a few times at his theater in California. They haven't released it for purchase or anything, but they're thinking that they might get it dropped on Netflix. Do I think that watching Kill Bill 1 and 2 together makes Kill Bill as a whole a better film? Yes. Volume 1 is very action-centric, not as much story, while Volume 2 is more story centric and less actiony. And I think both of them together would have melded perfectly. But I love Volume 1. I love the action. I mean, the Crazy 88 scene is hands down to one of my favorite action sequences in the 20s or 20s in the 2000s. I think even the opening with her and was it Viera Green? I think it's Viera Green, Vivica A. Fox's character. I think that's a fun way to start the film. I love all the characters. Daryl Hannah as Ellie Driver, David Carradine as Bill, even though we don't see Bill in Volume 1, we don't see him until the sequel, but I mean, you hear his voice and everything. Same thing goes with Michael Madsen. I love Bud, but we don't really get him barely at all in the first film. But Lucy Liu as O-Ren Ishii. I enjoy this film. It does have its faults, like all Tarantino films do. Most Tarantino films are not perfect films, no matter how many Tarantino fans claim they are. It's got its issues. It's got its way too much feet fetish stuff for Quentin Tarantino. There are some, I will say this, I love it and hate it. There are so many extras that stick out like a sore thumb to me in this film. There's the one guy, I don't know if you've ever spotted him, Brian, because I'm a stickler for like, I'll watch a movie and I'll remember a specific extra because my eyes focused on that extra. So whenever I watch that movie, I'm always watching that one person. There's this one guy. It's when they're in, I can't remember what the name of the club is, but it's where the Crazy 88 fight is. And it's the scene where Sophie, she's coming down the stairs and she's walking through the crowd and, you know, the Go-Go's or whatever, they're doing their thing. There's this one dude in the crowd who's really getting into the song. he's the only one that's like gritting his teeth, like digging his head in. He's overselling the song. I mean, everyone else is kind of just doing a real dance, and he's just doing it to the nth degree. And I always focus on him. There's also the one Crazy 88 guy that he's the one that gets his eye taken. And the whole time, like, she's like, take your limbs and whatever and leave. He's just like walking around like a drunk idiot the whole way through. Like, there's some great extras in this scene. They do kind of take away from the scene a little bit. But I really, this has got some of the best and some of the worst of Tarantino in it. It's got some great action sequences. I love the samurai aspect of it. I love the cinematography of this film. I think everything looks amazing, especially the O-Ren Ishii fight at the end where they're fighting outside. Obviously, the Crazy 88 scene looks great. I even love the stylisticness of the Pussy Wagon. I love the way all that looks. Even the anime of O-Ren Ishii's backstory, it's very dirty and kind of ugly to watch, but it's aesthetically works for the character that we're seeing and the backstory that we're seeing. I really, really enjoy Volume 1, kind of more than Volume 2, but I think they both need each other to work properly. Getting all out of the way, I know that Brian is not a fan of Kill Bill Volume 1, so Brian, have at it.
I mean, Quentin Tarantino, he's a good director and he makes good films. I don't know that he makes any bad films. This, to me, though, would be Quentin Tarantino's weakest film, except for the fact that Death Proof exists. But at least Death Proof had Mary Elizabeth Winstead in it, so
it's got Kurt Russell crying like a bitch at the end. I'm sorry, that's great.
But I mean, this movie to me, you talk about how it has like the best and the worst of Quentin Tarantino, and I totally agree with that. But I just think that the things that are the worst of Quentin Tarantino are what kind of ruin this for me. I think that he gets way too into the Quentin Tarantino-isms that he does. I think he gets in his own way, and he kind of, in my opinion, almost ruins the movie by trying to be like all clever and stylistic with all the things he does. I mean, first of all, he just has this feeling like, ooh, look what I'm doing. It's so cool. Isn't this retro? And it's just like, okay, you're getting kind of obnoxious. He's become almost a parody of himself. And this is the movie where he most kind of did that. Because the style, the music, the obnoxious music through most of this movie. I hated most of the music in this movie.
I like the music.
All the retro nods he sticks in just to be like, ooh, look at all these retro things that I know, and I'm going to stick randomly in my movies. I did not understand why they started off with the Copperhead fight. I honestly thought, like, wait, did I bump the skip button?
Here's the only reason why, because even as I was watching, I was like, why did they do that? If you're talking about a finale to the first volume, are you going to finish it with the Viera Green fight, or are you going to finish it with the Crazy 88 You're gonna finish it with the Crazy 8-8 over an Ishii fight, which I agree. Why not just?
But even because Quentin Tarantino obviously wants to do his non-linear thing, but this is kind of like almost the only place they really kind of do that. Except, I mean, there's flashbacks, but this scene is just like out of order for no reason to be out of order, except to be like, hey, let's just start off in this random scene, and then we'll back up and get into the movie.
Which why not just have her be the first character?
It just seemed kind of pointless to start off with that scene. So there's that thing that Quentin Tarantino did for no reason except he likes non-linear storytelling. Having the one scene done in anime, I first of all didn't think the animation was that good. Second of all, it went on way too long, and third of all, it didn't even need to be told in anime. It's like, just show us a normal scene. What else was there? I will agree. The cinematography, I think, was for the most part very, very good. I think it looks really cool. The Crazy 88 fight, I have no problems with that fight, except for the fact that, contrary to the trailers, that fight was in black and white for no reason.
You know why though, right?
For ratings.
Yeah, it was for the rate. The whole bloody affair is not in black and white. It's
exactly, but for this one they went into black and white. It is just like, cut a couple blood spurts or something, man. Because it was in. I understand like when they put flashbacks in black and white, it's kind of create that separation. Here, this scene went to black and white for no reason, and we saw, like I said in the trailer, you saw it in full color, and like, this is gonna be a cool scene, and it's very colorful and vibrant, and then it's like the best scene of the movie. They kind of mute the whole thing. I have no problems with the fight.
That way they wouldn't go NC-17 with it because it was too violent. Like that's
so let's see it that way. Which brings me to my other problem is the whole Volume 1, Volume 2. That's just more self-indulgent Quentin Tarantino. Make one 2.5 hour movie, 2 hour 45-minute movie, which he obviously did after this. His movies got longer and longer. You get to like Django and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Hateful Eight. They're longer movies. And that's great. Make a 2.5 hour, 2 hour 40-minute movie instead of like, oh, I'm going to split these up into 2 volumes and 2 separate movies and just be self-indulgent. It's like, no, nobody cares enough about this to make it. Well, nobody with a brain cares about this to make 2 movies. If you want, you can go and put it like you did with Hateful Eight and do like a Netflix series and have the additional chapters you wanted to shove in the middle of it. But again, it's not a bad movie because Quentin Tarantino is a talented guy, but it's one of my least favorite of his. So it is what it is.
My least favorite is Hateful Eight. I just couldn't enjoy that.
That's one of the few. It's like there's kind of Pulp Fiction is by far my favorite. Then there's like Hateful Eight and Django and Reservoir Dogs. And then you get into like, and there's like a big drop down to like Jackie Brown, Inglourious Basterds, some of those. Then the Kill Bills, then Death Proof.
See, you and I we're almost like reverse. Like it's ridiculous how you and I see so differently on Quentin Tarantino. But once again, he didn't want to split the movies. That was Harvey Weinstein who made him split the movies. The whole bloody affair is 4 hours long, which that he's getting ready to come out with a Once Upon a Time in Hollywood version that's 4 hours long. He didn't want to split it. That's the reason why he split it.
This is why I'm glad he's going to stop making movies, because he's just gotten to become a parody of himself. This is ridiculous.
But I mean, he didn't want to split it into 2 films. He split it into 2 films because he was forced to by the studio. That's why he did what he did.
Cut it into a shorter film instead of trying to make it a 4-hour film. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but I mean, you can say that about a lot of films. I mean, you can attack The Lord of the Rings for that. I'm not attacking it for that. But you could say that about The Lord of the Rings. Definitely The Hobbits. I mean, there's. I
definitely the moment The Hobbit was announced.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of films that you could attack that with. So just attacking it over Kill Bill, I feel like is a little bit of a, harsh thing. Or saying that anyone with a brain wouldn't like, 2 volumes. Come on, man. That's
some people have no taste. Just saying.
Anyway,
you knew this was coming. Come on.
I knew. I didn't know you're going that mean with it. But anyway, Kill Bill. Like I said, it's very hard to just watch one and without watching the other because it is a complete story, keeping all 2 of them together because it is supposed to be one story. Even when I do my ratings for the Tarantinos, I do it as Kill Bill, The Whole Bloody Affair, even though I haven't seen The Whole Bloody Affair, because to me, they're not 2 separate films. They're one huge film told in parts, which, we saw that with the last Harry Potter. We saw that with the last Twilight. I think the last Divergent was supposed to do it, but then it didn't even get released. But I mean, it's the way it is. Studios are going to make those decisions and it's out of the director's hands, and then they have to edit it that way to make it work. I mean, I can't blame Tarantino
It's
necessarily.
a fine explanation for it, but I still am going to call it like I see it. Like the product that came out, I'm like, it's not a movie. It's a half a movie. It didn't need to be. Yes, there's an explanation for it. Doesn't change the fact. Anyway.
All right, and we're not going to get any headway through that. Anyway, I love Kill Bill. Most people do like Kill Bill. Brian is in the minority on that.
I fully acknowledge I am in the minority. Yes.
Yeah, just like I'm in the minority when it comes to Pulp Fiction. I don't think Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs are his best works. I think I'm kind of in the other. The way you think about Kill Bill is the way I think about Reservoir and Pulp Fiction. I think they're fine, but I think it's a little too up his own ass in those films. So we agree, but we just disagree on the wrong films. So it's one of those things. But anyway, Kill Bill Volume 1 and Volume 2 are both on HBO Max. If you're a Tarantino fan, you obviously seen Kill Bill. We're not going to tell you to watch it because if you watched it, you've watched it. It's one of those things. Anyway, moving on to our featured film, something that me and Brian can agree on. Away from Kill Bill, we're talking about our feature film. We are breaking our rule, guys. We didn't realize we were breaking the rule until we were actually, I was doing the homework for this. We usually, in the Weekend Crusaders, we usually make sure everything has to be theatrically released and has to have a box office and all this kind of stuff. We had made our picks for these movies months ago. Like, we've had December picks, I think, since March. Like, we basically spent a whole night and we made all our picks. We knew what was coming up. This film, I think it got maybe one or two theaters released. But
yeah, it got a lot of film festival showings in theaters.
Yeah,
and then I did find something saying it got a limited theatrical release, but that was probably 3 theaters in LA or something.
Yeah, nothing that would have popped up as a weekend opening or a finished box office. It was more on demand indie kind of film. So technically, no, this was not released in theaters technically. But you know what? We got to this point where it's like, screw it. It's October. We love this film. We're just going to talk about it. We don't care. Our featured film is The Final Girls. The Final Girls did come out October 9th, 2015, had a budget of $4.5 million. Like I said, no weekend box office, no weekend opening, no finished box office. But as you can see, these are the 5 movies that were the top 5 for that week. Obviously, The Final Girls is not listed. That is probably, though, one of the things that I think is the biggest criminal of this film. This film would have killed it in theaters. I think this movie would have done great in theaters. I really 100% believe that this would have been a hit. And for them not to go to theaters, I think is one of the biggest missed opportunities for this film. Because there are so many people that don't know that this movie exists. And this is probably one of my favorite horror films. And even then, it's horror, but it's not horror. It's more comedy. But, I mean, it is technically horror. I love this film. I watched this film 2 months ago, and I told Brian, I'm not going to watch it again because I literally just watched it 2 months ago. I still ended up going back and rewatching it. Still love it immensely. I love the meta aspects, which we'll probably touch on a little bit more when Brian talks about it. I love the cast. I love the story. I love the acting about one very, very particular story element of this film. I love this film. I will defend this film to anyone. I will recommend this film to anyone, even non-horror fans. I will recommend this film to. I love this film. Brian, thoughts on Final Girls?
Well, first of all, if you do decide to go seek this out, and you should, make sure you watch The Final Girls, because this movie came out the same year, just called Final Girl, starring Abigail Breslin. Not nearly as good.
Did not know that was a thing until I started trying to find pictures. I was like, why is Abigail Breslin keep popping up?
No, the same year she came out with the movie. And actually, I think they got released on DVD and stuff almost at the same time, within a month or two of each other. So,
and because October, it is now available on Hulu.
Yeah, it's on Hulu. It's also, if you don't have Hulu, you can watch it on Tubi TV with ads. You can watch it on there.
2 months ago, I had to borrow it from you from Movies Anywhere because it wasn't on anything. Now it's on Hulu, so there's no reason for any of you guys to check it out.
Yeah, now it's October. Check it out.
Go ahead.
I equate this with some other movies like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, which are another great horror comedy that I think would have been probably a pretty big hit because people seem to love this kind of horror comedy, especially on the heels of stuff like Shaun of the Dead and things like that.
Cabin in the Woods.
But did not get a theatrical release, at least not a realistic one. So I mean, people have been discovering it on VOD or DVD or streaming or whatever, and it's one of those movies that I think would have found a great audience if more people had seen it. One of my favorite things about it is, I think, the meta aspect of it, which plays a big part in the movie. Basically, these kids in modern day, essentially, I won't go into the whole plot of it, but they get sucked into this horror movie they've been watching, which happens to
The Last Action Hero.
star one of the girls' mother, who is now dead. So she kind of gets to see her mother again. That's a big plot point they get into. But, I mean, the fact that they kind of have that commentary on how people are acting in horror movies and what's going to happen, what they know is going to happen in horror movies. Thomas Middleditch, who you know from Silicon Valley, I love his character in this movie. He's kind of the main comic relief. Well, actually, I won't say that.
He's the oh god, what's his name from Scream?
Oh my gosh, Jamie Kennedy as Randy.
Yeah, he's the Randy Jamie Kennedy character of this film to the nth degree. But yeah,
but I mean, you have Adam Devine, who I know can be a lot. But he's perfect for the character in this movie. He's supposed to play this dumb jock person within the movie. By the way, go see Jexy. Good movie.
Jexy is a good movie.
But I'm going to give my my VIP of this movie to Angela Trimber, who plays Tina. Oh my god, I love Tina so much.
She's so great in this movie.
She's supposed to be kind of the whore of the group. If you want to go by the Cabin in the Woods.
She's the slutty ditzy girl, and she plays it. Perfection.
So much fun, especially when there's times they want to have to make sure she doesn't take off her clothes. So the things they do to her to make her so she can't do it, and then when she gets a hold of some drugs and she's all freaking out. She seems like Tammy and over the edge after she's taken some drugs, but it's just
so good. So good.
I love her character and her acting so much in this movie. She for me was my favorite part of the film, and that's saying a lot because I actually enjoyed all the characters. I think there are parts of it that work as a horror film, even if you're not looking at it as a comedy. I think definitely the meta aspect was my favorite part of it. But then I think Chantal's getting into it. There's a more touching storyline that actually works real well too, which you wouldn't expect in a movie like this.
It works fantastic, and you touched on it a little bit. The main plot point is you have Max, who's played by is it Tessa Farmiga? How do you say her first name?
Taissa
Farmiga, which many people know from American Horror Story. She plays the daughter of Nancy, played by Malin Ackerman. She was in this film. Think of it like Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween. This was basically kind of like their version of Friday the 13th. It was her biggest role. She's kind of been typecast to that role. But anyway, their mother and daughter, they have a bad car accident. Malin Ackerman's Nancy dies. It fast forwards a year later. They're doing an anniversary show at the movie theater for this film. So this is basically Max seeing her mom on the big screen. But then when she gets sucked into the film with her friends, there's this beautiful story. And the first scene, because they're following the film, and I'll touch on the meta thing here in a little bit. But the first scene where everyone, like all her friends, realize this is the introduction to Nancy, and she rises up from the backseat awake, and everyone's just focused, and you see Max's reaction. That is, even by regular movie standards, like not even horror, just regular film standards, that acting is beautiful. That is a beautiful reaction and set. They don't go over the top with it and scream or like, oh my God, Mom, or anything like that. They play it so earnest and heartfelt and beautiful. And that whole character arc between Max and her mom, who's not really her mom. She's basically playing the character in the film, but it is her mom technically. That whole arc from there all the way to the final scene with them in the film is done with such care and respectfully done. It's not done in like normal horror tropes where it's over the top or it's treated as a joke or it's treated like not respectfully. That character element between those two characters is done fantastically, and take the horror element out of it. And any other film, it is done beautifully. I love their transitions together. And then you got Angela Trimber as Tina, which is fucking hilarious. And I love her character. I love everyone. Adam Devine, I mean, like I said, he's an acquired taste to a lot of people. I love him. I think he's great in this. Alexander Ludwig,
I've got to mention him, who I've loved since Vikings, and then in Bad Boys,
or even
Life,
not even Vikings, Hunger Games. He was in Hunger Games for anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was just main goon #1 in Hunger Games. But in Vikings, he's fantastic. Thomas Middleditch, hilarious. Nina Dobrev, who I love. Her character is so bitchy. Like, she's such a bitch character. But even then, they give her an arc that makes her character feel earned and truthful. Same thing with Ali Shawkat, who plays Gertie, for people who know Arrested Development. All the real characters, and I say real because obviously you have like the real people, and then you have the actors of the movie. All the real characters are taken such care of by the script that they all have their own character arcs. They all have their own personal special places in the film. Even in the meta aspects of the film, they know what characters they are in this, and they accept it. They're like, I'm clearly this character. I know my time's coming up. They're going to fight through it, but their acceptance of it, I think, is done incredibly well. I love the direction.
It's basically like having an entire movie of Guy Fleegman's from Galaxy Quest. He's like, I'm the 5th crew member. I'm the one who's going to die.
Yeah, but it's not done in an over-the-top deal. Like, it's done with such respect, and I love that. And even the non-real characters, they're over-the-top, corny, cheesy. But even when the veil gets lifted from them, even they take it in stride for the best they possibly can. And I think that they mesh well with the characters as well. And like I say, you bring the meta aspect of it, like the movie just keeps repeating every 92 minutes, and then like the flashback. I love the flashback effect. Yeah. And like even the font, where like they're having to walk over the font on the film. Like there's in like the overplay, like later in the film where they're like, say the flashback. Beautiful twist in it. There's just and even the final act, the sky. I loved the cinematography color scheme that they did. I've never heard the song Betty Davis's Eyes until this film, and now I love it because it makes me think of this film. This is one of my favorite horror films. I love this movie so damn much. And every time I rewatch it, I almost like forget how much I love it until I'm halfway through, and I'm like, God damn, this movie is so damn good. And I feel like this film, not necessarily, I don't think it would have been like, this like #1 box office smash. I feel like it probably would have been like Scott Pilgrim, where it would have made its money back because it only took $4.5 million to make. But I feel like the people that will go see it will be talking about it forever, like we do with Scott Pilgrim, and loving it. And then it'll create this cult following and become this way bigger thing than anyone thought possible, like Scott Pilgrim did. And this movie's still not talked about by a lot of people. It's really not. And it deserves so much more. The cast deserves so much more. This is Malin Ackerman's best performance she's ever done. Can you name a better performance she's had, personally?
No, because I was actually thinking that she's one of those actors who, like, she either does like starring roles in like a lot of kind of movies like a straight to video, or she plays like supporting roles in big movies like Watchmen and Rock of Ages and things like this, which I mean, those aren't the best movies to use as examples, but she's never gotten a chance to like kind of play a great role like this. So yeah,
this is her hands down her best performance. I love this film. If you guys have never seen The Final Girls, like I said, it's on Hulu. It's free on Hulu. Go out of your way to watch this film. You will not be disappointed. This is a fantastic meta horror film with a ton of heart. The comedy, especially from Angela Trimber's Tina, is hilarious. And even Adam Devine's Kirk, yes, he's over the top, but it's perfect for the character that they're playing. And then the outtakes at the end are great as well. Probably my favorite outtake is when Thomas Middleditch just tries to hop the rope, and I think he really hurts himself. I died watching that. Oh,
the best part of watching the other character, like Alexander Luga especially, was like
watching all them break over there in the corner because they can't tell if he's really hurt or if he's overacting. I I could keep talking about how much I love this film, but I'm just repeating myself. Brian, I don't know if you love it nearly as much as I do, but I fucking love this film so much.
I really enjoy this a lot. I mean, I didn't give it a high rating. I mean, it's you know, a pretty good rating when I gave it. But I think it's almost more disappointment that they didn't do more with it, and that's not really a fault of the film. It's a fault of the budget and the fact that, you know, because it didn't get a theatrical release, didn't find its audience, they weren't able to kind of go on with this. But I very much enjoy it. It's one that I would recommend as something different, because people have seen all the same horror movies every year at Halloween time. Watch this one instead.
Guys, if you liked Happy Death Day, this is right there.
Yeah.
This is right there. Or Freaky. It's right there. And the way it ends, oh my God, I so badly want a sequel to this film, and we're never going to get it. I so badly want a sequel to with the way this movie ended. But yeah, it's on Hulu. Check out The Final Girls. You will not be disappointed. It is amazing in my eyes. And it's very, very good in Brian's eyes, which to me, that's like having a 5-star
That's a win for
Brian. But yeah, anyway, that's our show, guys. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Weekend Crusaders. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Let us know what your thoughts were on these films. Have you guys checked out The Final Girls? If not, check it out. Let us know what you thought of it. Don't forget to follow us on all the social media outlets CC below. Coming up next, obviously my review for No Time to Die is on the channel, so don't forget to check that out to see what Daniel Craig's final Bond film was. Brian, quick thoughts on No Time to Die since you watched it and didn't do the review with me.
Not enough Anna de Armas. That's all I have to say.
I 100% agree with that because she was flipping amazing in it. But yes, coming up next in terms of films, next week we've got Halloween Kills, which I hope to God it's better than the last one because it was fine. But
for me, it's a low bar. It might be my favorite of the Halloween movies, but that's because I don't really like most of the Halloween movies, including the original one. I think is okay.
Honestly, my favorite is probably H2O. That's probably my favorite.
I'm not even sure. There's those later ones all muddled together for me, so I don't even know what's what.
H2O is the one with Josh Hartnett and like LL Cool J. But yeah, Halloween Kills comes out. That's in theaters and on Peacock. And then also in theaters, we have The Last Duel, which I'm incredibly intrigued with. Wondering if that's either going to be really good or really, really shitty. With the cast, it can really go either way, but I'm leaning more towards hopefully really good.
It's got your girl from Free Guy in it. It's written by Ben and Matt again, along with a third writer, which is weird because this isn't like their kind of thing.
And then you got Adam Driver, which you and I both like Adam Driver.
Yeah.
So that'll be out in theaters.
Well, we like Adam Driver better when he's funny though. So
true, and this is definitely a more serious role. But I mean, just seeing Ben Affleck's hair in this movie alone is comedy enough.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of people playing dress up. So I mean, I honestly think it'll be a good movie, but it's just we'll see.
Yeah, we'll have reviews for both. I'll be reviewing both of them, so check that out next week on the channel. And then of course, Brian and I will be back next week with 5 more movies to talk about on the Weekend Crusaders. We have another video game film that I do not like. Brian's never seen it, right?
I have. I don't really remember it at all though,
because it's not memorable. So we're gonna have to watch that again. Yay. We have a comedy that is incredibly offensive, but so damn funny. I haven't watched it in a long, long time, so we'll see if the jokes still hit for me. We've got a comedy from Brian's pick that I remember liking it, not loving it. Brian loves it, so that'll be a rewatch for me. We've got a horror film that I also think is way underrated for what it did. Brian hates it, so we'll see how that conversation.
For me, this is the bigger stinker of the week.
This is not a stinker. And then we've got another horror film that Brian and I both love for A, the cast, and B, for just how well I think they handled the character of it. So figure out what those 5 movies are, and we'll be back next week for another episode. My name's Sean Wasserkrug. That is Brian Michaels. We are the Weekend Crusaders. Until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.